Alright, guys, continuing on with the Saw franchise with Saw 3 from 2006. Believe this is directed again by Darren Lynn Bousman? Boozman? I don't know how to say the last name. I am terrible with pronouncing names. And I haven't worn this hat in a long time. This is like me at my most jam band hippiness from back in the day, touring Grateful Dead and Fish concerts. I got like mad hats. So I saw it sitting there on my bedpost. I said, you know what? I haven't worn that hat in forever. Why not? Got some quartz sticking out here. But this is one of my favorite Saw films. Just the whole way that it plays out. And then I love how it ties directly into 4 and how they're happening at the exact same time. Some of my favorite moments in the Saw franchise is in this movie. Same with 6 and probably 4 too. So 3, 4, and 6, and then the original are probably how I'd rank them. 5 is the weakest link out of all of them, as well as Spiral from the Book of Saw, which I don't. It's not terrible, but it's just not a Saw movie to me. Like, there's so many things in there that just, I don't know, just did not work for me. Especially the voice of Jigsaw. Why change it to, like, some woman sounding weird voice? I'll never understand that decision. Like, if you're going to make a Saw film, even if it's loosely connected to the previous 8 films, the one thing you don't want to change is the voice of Jigsaw. Like, like that's the most iconic part of this whole series. Besides, like, the traps and stuff, which I've said in the last 2 videos, I really don't care for the traps. Like, I really do enjoy the traps. I love seeing the effects work and stuff, and I love seeing the traps. But it's not the main reason I watch and love this franchise. It is basically like the story, the soap opera-ish horror torture story that runs through this whole series. And I think they have done an amazing job from going from the first Saw movie with no plans for a sequel or anything like that. And then as soon as it was greenlit, they started releasing one every single year. And just the way that they were able to connect everything and just make everything make sense and have reveals 2, 3 movies later that explain stuff from previous installments, like, it feels like it was planned. Like, it feels like it was written as one long story, even though we all know it's not. It wasn't. It was just all written as they went on. And just every Halloween, that's what you looked forward to every October for all those years, was the new Saw movie. So just for them to make this series so well connected and the story flow so well, and the continuity, as some of you know, is a huge thing for me. I can't stand, little continuity things. Those are the things I look out for in films and pick out and make fun of. Like, oh, this glass of milk is totally full, and then in the next shot it's fucking almost empty, and then the next shot it's halfway again. Like, those little type of continuity things are just fun things for me to pick out, and that's just how I've always watched movies. But continuity where, like, they change an actor or actress, like, mid-franchise, that bothers me. Or just, like, any, like, major type of continuity break really just gets to me. And the continuity in this series is amazing. Like, it really is. Like, the attention to detail, and I've said before, like, they have such dedication when they were making these movies for their attention to detail and the continuity, that they would bring back actors from 2, 3 movies ago for a 5-second or less shot in a flashback playing their dead bodies. That's almost unheard of. Like, that is some amazing dedication to be like, oh, all right, we need a flashback here, and this guy was dead in the scene on the floor. All right, well, get that actor back. He has to get on the ground and play his dead body. Like, I don't know if they did it all the time, but I know they did like a decent amount, and that's just brilliant. And the fact that they went that far to keep the continuity and to keep it the attention to detail, and just that's one of the major things I adore about this series. So let's hop into Saw 3 from 2006. I'll have Saw 4 up probably right after this. We have 10 days left in the month, so I think this might be the first month in a while that the main theme of the month will be finished on time by the end of the month. Didn't even want to say that and jinx myself, but I mean, we got 10 days, and after 3 and 4 tonight, 5, 6, 7, 5 films left in 10 days. That's easy. So let's talk Saw 3. Also, as much as I know and remember a lot of this, like throughout the whole series, there's stuff I'm going to forget, and as I go on with the series, I'll retract things and fix, whatever I got wrong. But the last movie with Saw 2, my video for that, for some reason I was calling Carrie, or Kerry, whatever her name is, I was calling her Agent Perez. And that's not Agent Perez. It's two different ladies. So I don't know why I thought of Perez. But that's Carrie. Carrie. I don't know. Some of these characters pronounce her name differently. But totally different person. So that's corrected. And then the second thing, which I don't have an answer for still, after rewatching Saw 2, what was the whole point of that whole plan for Jigsaw and Amanda? Like, it was Eric Matthews' test. It was his game. What does that have to do with anything? Like, why did they need this whole game for Matthews just for him to end up locked in the fucking bathroom? And then we see that he gets out, and then we see in Saw 4, right? Yeah, Saw 4, we see him like 6 months later with a beard, and when he's like hanging on the ice block. So was it just to get him and keep him captive and use that as motivation for Riggs for his game that he has to play in Saw 4 about learning his lesson about never entering a room, an unsecure room, or going through an unsecure door? That's the only thing I can think of. If anyone has any interpretations on that or ideas for that, of what was so important of getting Eric Matthews involved at all, like, that's one thing I don't get, and never have really, but I never really thought about it or noticed it until the last rewatch when I did the video. So if anyone has any theories and ideas on why Eric Matthews was so important to Jigsaw and Amanda to go through that whole game with all the criminals and stuff, with Daniel Matthews in there with them, for what? Like, I really don't get it. Like, I really don't understand why they went through all of that trouble. The whole plan here in this movie and going forward, they make a lot of sense. And that's what I like about the later installments, is that 3 through 7, basically, and then Jigsaw is the prequel, but 3 through 7 is when the stories really start coming together and interlocking and connecting back to themselves and stuff. So 2 seems like a very standalone film compared to the rest of the series afterwards. Like, even the first movie connects more to 3 through 7 than number 2 does. So, still wondering about that. So let me know your thoughts on it. So obviously, we left off in the last film with Detective Matthews being chained up in the same bathroom from the first movie by Amanda, and him just screaming in the dark as she says game over and slams that door shut and saying, "You fucking bitch, I'll fucking kill you." I love Donnie Wahlberg in Saw 2, this one that he's not really in a lot, and in the next one, which he again doesn't really have like lines or anything. But I really like Donnie Wahlberg in Saw 2 and in Dead Silence. And I said, and I think in the last video for Saw 2, that I wish that James Wan would have kept Donnie around like for future projects of his, because I do enjoy Donnie Wahlberg a decent amount, more than Mark. Like I'm very iffy and torn on Mark Wahlberg. Like he's done some great performances, and he's done some god awful ones. The first one that comes to mind is in The Happening by M Night Shyamalan. Terrible. Like what a bad performance. What a terrible movie, all around. But what a terrible performance by Mark there. But Donnie always gives his all. Like I really enjoy Donnie Wahlberg. So we see him here in the beginning, and he's in the bathroom still. And smart thinking, this guy, like Adam, could have survived if he would have taken a page from the Detective Matthews playbook. Fuck it, sawing your foot off. This guy just takes the toilet lid and just smashes his foot to bits so he can get it out of the chain. Good thinking on him. Like, I mean, I'm sure that's got to be so painful, like unbelievably painful. But at least he thought of it and he got out of the chains. He didn't get too far, but at least he got out. We also have Riggs returning here, and Carrie. If I say it that way, then it sounds like Carrie and Carrie. So I win, no matter what. But we have Carrie returning here, not for long, but she returns. And that's what made me realize that, yeah, I was calling her Agent Perez. That don't make sense, because I know that Carrie dies here in this movie. So I'm like, wait, but Agent Perez is in the later ones. So I was like, yeah, I fucked that up. But this is the first film that we finally are introduced to Agent Hoffman, or Detective Hoffman. And I know a lot of people who don't like him as a character. I think he's a phenomenal secondary antagonist in this whole franchise. I love the character of Hoffman. Like, what a just sadistic dick. Like, a sadistic is basically what he is. But he is a smart guy. Like, he keeps the whole Jigsaw games going, and is heavily involved in helping John and Amanda even early on. Now that's things that I don't remember, that I'm going to have to remember as I go through the rest of the movies. When Hoffman initially started with Jigsaw, and when Dr. Gordon officially started with Jigsaw, because we can only assume that Dr. Gordon started pretty early with them, because he's a doctor, he's a surgeon. Like, he knows, he's medically trained. So many of these traps that we see have to be so precise medically. Like, I'm not sure if it's in 4. When they have the trap with the arrows sticking through the couple that are back to back, they got to know exactly where and make sure they're not puncturing major organs and stuff like that. And there's a lot of different stuff like that throughout many of the traps in the series that only Dr. Gordon would be able to do. I mean, I'm sure Hoffman might have some knowledge of human anatomy and like what can be done and how to do certain traps like that. But Hoffman's whole thing anyway, we find out later in the series, is that same with Amanda. He's making traps that are inescapable, that they're not meant to be beaten in any way, that they're just being tortured and killed. There's no choice. Which I've already said, this is a decent amount already that John Jigsaw has done, that pretty much seemed like there was no fucking way out anyway, too. But with Amanda and Hoffman, it's completely different. Like, they are not following Jigsaw's whole little mantra and life lessons to try to test human survival and all that. They're just out to make chaos. They're just out to kill these people with no choice and no way to survive the traps. And we see a lot of that here regarding Amanda, which plays a huge role in the ending of this movie. So, interesting to go forward and remember exactly when Hoffman and especially Dr. Gordon, which we don't find out he's even involved until the 7th film. But between the two of them, because Amanda ain't doing all this shit. She said that she built, I know in this movie she says that she built the device that goes around Lynn's neck, the doctor that's here to make sure John doesn't die, and does the whole brain surgery on him to relieve the pressure, which is a gnarly scene. And Amanda says that she built it. So I can see her building some traps, like some type of mechanical stuff, but I do not see her doing any of the like really like precise traps that you have to have it set up just right, that you have to have medical knowledge. I mean, she was a drug addict. She A lot of drug addicts, believe it or not, they do know a lot about medication. They know a lot about drugs. They know a lot about the human body. They know a lot about mental illness. They know a lot of stuff from living it basically, but not enough, especially for Amanda's character, for her to be able to do any of that. And I didn't even start the movie, and we're 15 minutes in. So let's like get going with that. All right, so we open with this first trap here, and this is where we meet Agent Hoffman. I don't know why I keep saying agent. It's Detective Hoffman, right? Yeah, Agent Perez. She's FBI. So we have this opening trap when they're looking at the aftermath, and then we see the flashback of what happened. And we have the guy with the chains all throughout his body, like Frank from Hellraiser style, with the big ass one right in, like looped into his jaw. Now, of course, it would be so painful, like so painful, with a lot of these traps. But if it was me, I would just do it. You're either gonna die or rip these chains out of your body and rip your jaw off and live. I mean, for a lot of people, who would want to live after that? I get that. But it's for me, it's the same as like having some sadistic killer putting a gun to your child's head and saying, I'm going to kill your kid unless you slit your throat right here and there. I wouldn't hesitate. I'd slit my own throat for my daughter. And I'm sure any parents out there do the same thing. It's almost the same thing here. It's like and it does play into John's whole idea on human survival and his whole reason for doing these tests and games and trying to test the fabric of humanity here. So would it hurt? Absolutely. Are you serious? And he gets almost all of them out of him, the chains. The only one that he doesn't get out is the big ass one through his jaw, and that would be the hardest, of course. But still, I would do it. And I would not waste a second. As soon as the timer went off, I would be ripping left and right, boom, boom, and then we'll save it for last, obviously, because that's going to hurt like a bitch. I then just rip it out and get out of the room. But then we find out that, and I'm guessing Amanda did this trap, unless it was Hoffman. Like I said, I don't know when he started. I know it was early on because later in this movie, Amanda sees the envelope, which we don't find out for a few movies later, that was written by Hoffman. So he's been around since the events of 3 here. But taking into consideration that when we see Carrie get killed in that trap with the rib trap, and it rips her ribs apart, Amanda walks in. So I'm guessing that it's Amanda that's doing these traps. And it makes sense because Carrie makes a great point. That if Jigsaw's whole thing is that you're supposed to be able to survive these things, that even if he pulled all the chains out, the door was welded shut. So why weld the door shut if he had any way of getting out of there, which he didn't? So great call by Carrie. Absolutely. So I can only assume that this is Amanda, possibly Hoffman, but I'm going to go with Amanda just for this whole film. Basically is the whole game here is for Jeff and for Amanda. So I'm going to go with Amanda on that. Now, I said this in the last one, and we'll continue saying it whenever it's brought up. And yeah, that hat my head must have got bigger since then because that shit was kind of tight. Going back to my little Irish hat. But they all have such old TVs in this franchise. And now we see Carrie here watching the tape of Troy, of the guy with the chains in him. Then we get the feed turns into a camera that's in her hotel room or apartment, whatever it is. And she ends up getting kidnapped by Amanda. But how did that happen? Like, how did Amanda get the feed from a video camera to just play on an old ass TV? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a little far fetched. But in the circumstances where, like, during a trap and the old ass TV just turns on by itself, no fucking way. Like, there's no way that makes sense. Unless, like I said in the last video, that if there's some type of device they had or some type of switch that they were able to control from another room, the next room over or something, and like a stomp switch, you step on it and it starts the TV. Who knows? But it's very, very unbelievable. So now we see Carrie waked up, woke up in the ribcage trap, which is a cool trap. Like, the thing is basically right hooked into her ribcage, which brings up again, was Dr. Gordon helping this early on? Because I can't picture Hoffman or Amanda doing this. To be able to hook this machine into her ribcage without severely hurting her or anything like that. And of course, again, like, this is a trap not meant to get out of. Like, this is just flat out murder on Carrie here by Amanda. But again, to survive this trap, if you were able to, just put your fucking hand in the acid and take the key out. Like, and unlock it. And she does. She wastes a decent amount of time. But she does, and she does get it unlocked. And then that's when Amanda comes in, and that's when it just tears her ribcage apart. And it looks awesome. It looks so good. Like, the effects in the series are great. Like, and everyone knows how I'm a big slasher fan and practical effects and all of that. I love my gore here and there. Don't need it. Like, I can think of a decent amount of slasher movies that don't really have a lot of gore in it, and I'm fine with it. I adore those movies. But I love seeing some gore, man. And that's what I would have to do, too, in this situation. Again, if you were able to actually get out of this trap. As soon as that tape ended, my hand would be right down in the acid picking up that key. Because would you rather your hand be melted away by acid that they can maybe somehow treat? Or have your fucking ribs ripped apart? So it's really not an option. There's no choice there. It's put your hand in the acid and get the key. Like, there's no other way. Like, if you really want to live, that's what you got to do. And I love how Amanda walks in and this trap goes off and rips her apart. And it's sad, because Carrie is a great character. Another thing I think they do a very good job in this movie with is keeping apart the fact that Lynn and Jeff are married. Like, we get this scene here with Lynn with her lover she's having an affair with. And just the way that the dialogue is written and everything, and then especially with him, like, you can see that they're not making eye contact, and he even says, can we, like, at least talk and, like, look at each other? And then her line of, what do you want from me? And him saying a divorce. Very clever. Because the first time I saw this, I thought exactly what I heard. Like, that they're married, he wants a divorce. And I think they did that very well. Because when you find out at the end that Jeff and Lynn are husband and wife, you don't expect that. So they did a very good job with that. Even though I have some nitpicks with that whole revelation, which I'll get to near the end. And this is a long film, too. Like, compared to, I forget how long the rest of them are, but it's like an hour and 50-minute film. And I know a lot of it is because they had to address Eric Matthews in the beginning, then they had to deal with Carrie and introduce Hoffman until they finally get to what I call the real start of this movie with Jeff and his whole game starting. So it's a long movie. So strap in as usual. It's just gonna be long, like all my videos usually are. So we meet Lynn, and we know that she's a great doctor who is under a lot of stress and taking antipsychotics or antidepressants. I think John says to her later on. So she's having a hard time dealing with this whole affair she's having, and with the loss of their son, which again we find out near the end that they're husband and wife. So we don't know that she lost a son until we get that revelation. And then she gets kidnapped by Amanda. And now she's going to have to help keep John alive. So we have Lynn, who meets John here for the first time, and he's pretty much on his deathbed. He's got oxygen. He's just looks like shit. And he even asks her, he says, in your professional opinion, how long do I have left? And she starts being a doctor and saying that there's no real answer. Like, there's too many variables. It's an inoperable brain tumor, that they're very unpredictable. It could be weeks, it could be months, and he just shuts her all down. And he just basically says, excuse me, just, all the medical lingo aside, looking at my file, how long would you say I have left? And she says, not long. And I don't even think you needed a doctor here to tell you that. Like, he looks dead almost. He looks like a half cadaver. So I don't think anyone needed a doctor's advice to find out and tell that John is on his way out very, very soon. And then we have Amanda comes with the neck device with the bullets all around it that will go off if John's heart monitor flatlines. So if John dies, then she dies. And that's got to be one hell of a bunch of pressure to deal with. Like, 100%. Yeah, screw saving it for the end. An issue I have here with the reveal at the end of Lynn and Jeff being husband and wife, and that Amanda didn't know that, is how didn't she know that? Like, she went and kidnapped Lynn. Unless Hoffman or Gordon, which again, I don't know if they were involved here. Hoffman, I'm pretty sure was. Gordon, I'm not sure. I'll have to see as we go through the series. But if it was Amanda who kidnapped both of them, how did she not know they're husband and wife? Like, really? Like, how did she not know that? Like, she has to break into their apartment or, like, know stuff about them before she kidnaps them. So, like, when she went and kidnapped Jeff, she didn't see pictures in the apartment or any sign of evidence at all that Jeff is married to her. Like, that never made sense to me. Like I said, the only thing I can think of is that Hoffman kidnapped Jeff and Amanda kidnapped Lynn. That way, both of them didn't know the relationship between the two of them. I'm going to go with that, unless I'm misremembering something that we find out in a later installment that explains it. I'm pretty sure we don't get an explanation, though. But when we find out just how early Gordon and Hoffman have been working with John, that might clear it up. And then I will be able to go with what I'm thinking. That one of them, Amanda, kidnapped Lynn, and the other one kidnapped Jeff. That way, that knowledge was not known to the two of them. It was just keeping the knowledge of that relationship separated between all who's involved, except for John. There's so much left to chance with all of Jigsaw's games. Like, Jeff wakes up in a box. What if he just never woke up? Like, what if he was passed out for a few more hours and he missed the whole timeline? Like, the time limit that he has. What if he fucking fell out of that box and broke his leg? Or fucking anything like that. Like, anything could happen that they can't plan for. And of course, it's movies and you gotta put all that out of your head. But I don't do that. Like, you guys all know that. I can't do that. Like, I have to pick these things apart because if not, it bothers me. So, so much is left to chance here in this whole game, especially when we see the next film and we see how that whole movie was taking place at the same time as this one. That is so many variables. That is so many different things that can go wrong. Just, you can't plan for all of this. So, again, movie. But I've always wondered that. Like, how were they damn sure, John and Amanda, that Jeff would even wake up or find his way out of that box or anything like that? He does, and good for him. And another thing with Jeff, I feel like they made his character a little too much of an asshole. Like, I get it. He lost his son. Had to run to the bathroom. Forgot what I was saying with Jeff. I feel like they made him not sympathetic enough. Like, we get this scene here when his daughter, and he's looking at his son's possessions that he treasures and just doesn't move from his son's room. And then, sadly, later in his game, he has to destroy all his son's belongings, which, that's got to be so hard. But we see him in his son's room and sees that one of his stuffed animals is missing. Then he goes into the daughter's room. And just the way that he talks to his daughter, it comes off like he comes off like an asshole. Like, he doesn't come off, and I get it. I mean, you lose a kid. You're dealing with that. But you got to pull yourself together, like, somehow, for your other kid. Like, you lose a kid, it's the worst thing that can ever happen to you. But if you have more than one kid, you have to find a way to keep it together. You have to find a way to pull yourself together and get through it as a family and just be there for your other kid as much as possible. And I feel like they make him too dickish. They make him too much of an asshole, too much rage in him, which, of course, he's gonna be flooded with rage and guilt and anger and everything. But I feel like they could have made him a little more sympathetic so that we actually care more about him. And you do as the movie goes on. But that whole scene with him and his daughter really kind of rubs me the wrong way, if that's the right way to say it. Like, it makes me look at him as, man, this is his daughter. And his son was killed. That's his daughter's brother. And he's just a complete asshole to her in the scene that we see at the beginning here. So, I don't know. I feel like they could have handled that a little bit better. And then it does make sense. Because after she comes back in with the stuffed animal and says she's sorry to Jeff, he says, how much I love you. And then go get ready for school or something like that. And then when he gets up, there's a fucking gun underneath him. So he was maybe contemplating killing himself. Which, again, that's fucked up. You're going to kill yourself and you're going to leave your daughter without a father? Like, that's messed up. But again, I can, like, it's like a ping pong tournament. Like, I could see one side, but then it shoots over to the other side. And then I try analyzing that side, it shoots back to the other side. So I could see both sides of it. But I definitely feel they could have made Jeff a little more sympathetic of a character. And something funny, actually, that a subscriber and friend of mine brought up the other day. Noel, if you see this, this is for you. Who said to me, I forgot what video, maybe it was Piranha 3D, and he's like, so you actually liked a horror film for once. I adore 90% of the 300 plus films that I've covered since I started this channel 7 months ago. I guess just because of what I do with overanalyzing and picking out stupidity and nonsensical stuff might make it sound like I don't like a movie, but rest assured, I love most of the movies that I've covered so far on this channel. And this whole franchise I adore, as I've said a few times. I just have to do it. Like, it started with my father and I watching movies from when I was a little kid. And my dad's the same way. Well, he's not a horror fan. Like, we'll watch horror every now and then. Made him watch The Thing, like a few months ago. He thought it sucked. I said, don't ever fucking speak to me again. I said, Father, do not speak to me again. You thought The Thing sucked? This is my favorite film of all time here. And, but ever since I was a kid watching, we used to watch a lot of movies together and stuff growing up. Like, we bonded a lot with movies. And he was the same way, pointing out nonsensical stuff. And I just realized I didn't even mute the TV. I doubt I'll get copyrighted for that. But yeah, like, it's a deep rooted thing in me ever since childhood. So it's how I view all movies. So I'll rip movies apart that I absolutely love. Only exceptions are for films that I consider just perfect masterpieces. Halloween, The Thing, Mario Bava films, like Kill Baby Kill, Lisa and the Devil, Twitch of the Death Nerve, a lot of Argento films, Fulci, the Phantasm series, a whole bunch of them like that. The Exorcist, I can go on. There's a few handful of perfect masterpiece films to me. Day of the Dead. But even in some of those, I can pick out a little bit of stupidity. But mostly I don't even bother just because of how perfect those films are. But those films, those perfect films for me, are maybe like 10% of the videos I do so far, versus like 90% are all other films that it's completely on the table and I will be tearing apart and picking apart and nitpicking everything. But I just thought it was funny. So, Noel, if you ever see this, you made me laugh with that comment. But yes, I do love many, many horror films. Just none of the last few new releases that I saw. But yeah. So now I gotta figure out what the hell I'm talking about next. Oh yeah, the whole reason I brought all this up. So when Lynn and Amanda are talking, after she puts the device around her neck and explains to her and stuff, like, if we have a man too who's doing his own test, and if he makes it through all the tests in time and John's still alive, then I will take your collar off and you're free to go. Then they start talking about the care that John needs, that he has to go to a hospital, and that's obviously not an option, and that his brain is herniating, and that they're giving him painkillers. Amanda's giving him painkillers, which is not what he needs. He needs prednisone. He needs steroids. And then them saying that, yeah, tell me something I don't already know, Amanda says. And then she says, you can only get those type of drugs in a hospital. Now, you can get cocaine, heroin, fucking any illegal drug there is pretty easily anywhere in the world, especially in the United States. You can get that. Trust me, you can get steroids. Like, the exact steroids they need. If anything, like, we've seen people abducted in this movie by Amanda in all different places. You're telling me Amanda couldn't make her way into a hospital, pretend that she's an orderly or something, and not be able to, or just, if Dr. Gordon was working with them since this early on, you're telling me Gordon couldn't get those meds for John? So that might be something that might fight against the theory that Gordon was involved this early on. Might not be. It might have just been an oversight. But there's no way that it's impossible to get those steroids and the drugs for John that he really actually needs. All right, here's another thing. It's going to be a lot of this throughout this franchise, despite all of what I said about the story being great and it connects so well and the continuity is great and attention to detail. It is. But there's still going to be stupid shit in any movie. Most movies. You know, excluding all those perfect masterpieces for me that I consider. But we have Jeff here who lost his son. He got hit by a car in a hit and run. Now the first trap here, it's cool. I love the lighting in this. Just it adds to the coldness. Like you can feel how freezing it is in this room. And we have the naked chick that's chained up and she's freezing. Then the water jets start shooting ice cold water on her until eventually she just freezes way too fast. Like she's fine. She's cold as shit, yeah. Then like the final blast of ice cold water on her, and then just her whole body turns into a fucking human icicle. Like, come on, that's fucking stupid. But regardless of that, she was the only witness who saw Jeff's son get killed. But she ran. So how did John know who the hell she was? If she was the only witness there, and she didn't stay, and she just drove off, how does anyone know who she is, let alone John? That makes no sense. That's like saying there was somebody here, but no one saw them because they left. And then John finds out who it is. Like, that makes zero sense, and it has always bothered me. Another thing I really adore about this franchise is that it really makes me and makes you think of how you would handle yourself in these situations. Now, if God forbid, my daughter's 8, if she got hit by a car and killed, or killed in any way, 100% on Jeff's side here. But, and I would never be able to say this concretely, unless I was, God forbid, in that situation, which will never happen, hopefully. Like, Jesus, like, I don't even want to think about that. But this woman made a mistake. Like, she witnessed something, and it probably scared her, or she got emotional, or she didn't know what to do, and she drove off. I get it. I want to say I would forgive her, and that I would have released her from here. The one who killed his son, that's fucking hard. Like, I might not be able to. I would just let him die. The judge probably would let him too. Like, let him free too. Because it's a judge. He's doing his job. Yeah, he sentenced this guy to only 6 months in prison. The black guy who killed and ran over Jeff's son. But he's a judge. Like, there's laws. Like, there's loopholes. There's lawyers involved. Like, there's all of that. It's not like this judge purposely gave this guy the lightest sentence possible, 6 months in jail. For no reason, or a vindictive reason or anything like that. Like, absolutely not. So I could see myself, again, unless I'm ever in that situation, I could see myself letting the eyewitness girl and the judge free. Like 95% on that. So, I mean, and he's just so late for everything, Jeff, in this movie. Like, he's wastes so much time as this girl is getting frozen into a human popsicle before he even tries to go and reach for the key. Like, by the time he goes in there reaching for the key, she's already fucking frozen. And then he goes and touches her face and it cracks. That's so fucking stupid, like I said already. There's no way that that much ice and stuff is freezing on this woman just from one more blast of water. There's no chance. That is so dumb, and I'll never think otherwise of it. Like, it is just a stupid end result of that scene. And I really love this whole scene here with Amanda and Lynn. When Lynn's walking around and she's looking on, like, all the tools and traps and machinery and stuff like that all over this warehouse or wherever they are. And Amanda comes in. And right before she comes in, we get to see the reverse bear trap on, like, a mannequin head. Cool to see that. And then I think it's also cool that when Amanda comes in, that's the trap that went off on its own, and then she has to pick up the very trap that she was in and put it back. I think that's a cool cool little idea thrown in there. But I love that whole scene between them, with her saying, like, I know that you're looking around for any weapons that you can possibly kill me with, like that axe you were looking at over there. And then her saying, like, here, take it. Like, kill me. But if John hears it, then he's going to get pretty upset and rip off his heart rate monitor, which means you're dead. Or you can try disarming it, or you can try to take the collar off yourself. And then start saying how, but even the slightest little knock in the wrong place and stuff could set it off, and I should know I built it. Which, do I believe she built it? I don't see any reason for her to lie. So maybe she did. I'm sure John helped her. But we see her later on, Lynn, like near the end, when she gets shot by Amanda. She falls against the wall, fucking, she's moving, like hitting her body all over the wall and stuff. That seems like a lot of knocks in all different places on that collar. And it does not go off until John's dead, which triggers it. So, I don't know about that whole knock in the wrong place shit. I also love all the interactions between Amanda and John. And Amanda's jealousy, which is basically what kills her in the end. Of just when she starts seeing John talking to Lynn, and then that crucial moment when she walks in and sees John holding hands with Lynn, which sets her off completely. And that's just like, this bitch has to die. Like, why? What do you see in her? Why is she so important? And I love the foreshadowing here in Amanda's scene with John, when she's saying that Lynn's gonna do a procedure on you, and you picked her because she's the best, right? And he says that's one of the reasons, hinting at the whole scope of this game being Jeff and Amanda's game. More so Amanda. So I like that whole little foreshadowing line there. Now this whole scene with the judge, it's like the least worst trap in the whole series. I mean, he's just strapped down by his neck, and a bunch of pigs are fucking coming on an assembly line and drop through a shredder, and pig guts are all over him. Yeah, I'd rather be in that situation than being hung naked in a freezing room and frozen to death, or having to rip chains out of my body, or any of that. The reverse bear trap, when we finally see it happen to Jill in part 7, I want to say. Yeah, because in part 6 is when Hoffman almost has it happen, and then smartly but a little silly how he's able to put the trap through the bars in the window that he breaks on a door, and it just saves him enough because it doesn't go off completely. But any of those traps, especially with the next one, with the actual guy who killed Jeff's son. Was it the wretch or the something like that? I'll know in a sec. But being covered in fish guts and slime and whatever. If this guy did die here, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. Like, what an easy trap. And this isn't even for him to get out of. Like, it's not like this is the judge's trap and he has to find his way out of there in time. This is up to Jeff. And as hard as it would be, like, seriously, I still have my daughter's, she always called it Binky, like her little pacifiers, like the round ones that they give you at the hospital when a baby's first born. I still have like 3 or 4 or 5 of my daughter's Binkies. Like, I have her first miniature golf ball that she got a hole-in-one in. Like, I'm sentimental like that. So I 100% get how hard that would be, to have to incinerate your son that you lost, possessions that mean so much to you, that are so sentimental, that it feels like that's all you have left of your son. Like, it would be so hard. But like I said, it's not the judge's fault. I mean, you can be pissed off at everyone and blame everybody, but in the end, it was not his fault. He didn't kill his son. And like I said, with everything involved, all the variables in a court case, I'm sure the judge didn't just say, it wasn't too bad, fucking 6 months. Like, I guarantee that was not the case. So, the fact that he does rescue him here, I like that. I like that he actually rescues the judge. He doesn't last for long after this, but at least he did try to save his life. And did, in this situation. But that whole scene of him having to just finally just torch all his son's belongings until they're nothing, and then the key falls in. I could feel his pain. Like, I really could. And I think they handle that, they convey that so well. And the actor who plays Jeff portrays that pain and that loss and that yearning for just to have something left of his child. Like, I think all of that is handled phenomenally in this. Now, as gross as this scene is for some people, which I know, and I mean, funny side note, you guys know I vape nicotine, but the vape that I have now looks just like another vape, and I accidentally picked up the wrong one. So, mood's about to change in a few minutes. But this whole scene, as gross as some people find it, is very well done. The whole operation scene here that Lynn is doing on John to relieve the pressure from his brain pushing against his skull, and just using like peeling the skin back, and then taking the power drill and drilling in a few spots and stuff, and then taking the bone saw and cutting between those spots into a square, and then taking it off, and then the sack to the brain. And so it looks very realistic. Like, I'm not a brain surgeon and shit, but I have seen, like, videos and stuff of actual brain surgery and other type of surgeries and stuff like that. It does look pretty damn realistic. Like, and I remember thinking the same thing about John's autopsy in the next movie. Very realistic looking. So, as gross as it may be for some people to watch, it doesn't bother me at all. But unless it was happening to me, then I'd be freaked the fuck out. Are you serious? You got part of your brain exposed. But that whole scene, and I've heard people also who love this movie, that like or love this movie. I kind of like mixed like and love together right there. That wasn't that bad. Now it sounds even worse. But who like or love this entry, who think that this scene is very much padding. That it's just padding the already long runtime of, like I said, an hour and 50-minute movie this is. Saying that you can cut this whole operation scene out and save 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. I think this is an essential scene in this movie. It just, like I said, it looks fantastic and pretty damn realistic. So I absolutely adore that whole scene. And here's where we see the first time where after the procedure's finished, John reaches over and grabs Lynn while Amanda's in the room. And then we get the shot right on Amanda and her reaction. And then he's not in his right mind, obviously. He has general anesthetic for the procedure because they said that he needs to be awake for this whole procedure. So that's not messing with him much, but let's not forget, part of his brain is exposed. He just was being drilled into his skull and then bone sawed around it. He ain't thinking straight. And then grabs Lynn and he says, "I love you." And that just triggers Amanda even more. So I've always wondered, I'm like kicking back and shit now. I've always wondered, why is Amanda so infatuated with John? Why is she so jealous of Lynn? I have two theories. One, as we know, she's an ex-junkie, and she's still self-harming herself and cutting herself on her legs and stuff so John won't see it. So she's still doing things like this. A lot of drug addicts, not all of them obviously, all come from different backgrounds, but there's a decent amount who have bad home lives. And maybe my theory, number one, is that maybe Amanda didn't have a father. a father who wasn't around, an abusive father, something like that. And after she survived her first test with the reverse bear trap, and John, came and visited her and wanted to bring her on to teach him his life's work and to carry it on after he dies. So, is it because of that maybe that she looks at him as a father figure? But then why get jealous from Lynn being touched by John and saying, I love you too, Lynn? Why does that trigger her so much? It's almost like she has like a fatherly but romantic feeling in a way. And I don't mean romantic in like in the way that like Amanda wants to hop on that table and fuck John. Like not at all. But like I guess romantic was the wrong word. But some type of feeling maybe that he's the only person that understands her. Or so she thinks, like when she was first brought on with Jigsaw. Maybe it's because she yearns for just someone to care for her, for someone to say she's important, for anything like that. And that's where that love comes from. So hearing Lynn say, I love you, having John say, I love you to Lynn, could be the reason that it triggers her. So I'd love to hear people's theories on that. Like, what do you think Amanda's relationship with John on her end is like? Is it more of that fatherly bond, maybe that fatherly love, because she never had a father of her own, or an abusive father, or he ran out on the family, or whatever? Or is it more of that, just needing someone to notice you, needing someone to say you're important and that you're worth it, and all of that, or a mixture of both? So I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. So leave it in the comments. We'll discuss it. Then we get the scene here with the flashback of Amanda kidnapping Adam. Then we see Amanda and John setting up the whole bathroom trap from the very first film. So she has the same hair here as she did in 2. Like, it's much shorter, it's black, it's not like how it is in this movie. And it's not like how it was in the first film, where Dr. Gordon was able to sit there with the cops and watch Amanda's testimony of what happened to her. Her hair was a lot longer, and it was a different kind of color, shade of, well, it's not really a shade of black, but like different in a way. In the second movie is when she had the short, like spiky almost all over the place hair, and she has that here. So I'm guessing that's how she changed her hair when she first met up with John. And then after the events of the last 2 movies, she let it grow out or something like that. I always thought it was a wig in part 2, but now that I'm thinking about it, I forgot about this little detail here in this flashback, that her hair is still like that. Why would she be wearing a wig for no reason? Like just being around John. So that makes no sense. It definitely is her hair. So she was helping John right after she survived the first trap with the reverse bear trap. And in the second one, she went into that whole that whole building that they were trapped in with the criminals and Matthews' son with the same type of hair. So we know that Hoffman wasn't involved this early on. And we know, obviously, Dr. Gordon wasn't, because he was put in the trap and just saw his own fucking foot off. So it was only Amanda and John at this point. And I like how we see them setting the room up. I like how they chain Adam's leg to the, it puts his leg in the chain, Amanda does. I like how you see him paint with the glow-in-the-dark paint for the X, and with the heart on the toilet bowl. All of that is really cool. And then he starts injecting himself with something, and Amanda says, what is that? And he's saying, it's a sedative, it's to lower my heart rate, relax my muscles. I almost guarantee they put that in there, because I remember when after the first movie came out, As incredible as that twist was at the end, I heard a lot of people saying, like, there's no way that guy just laid there pretending dead for all those hours. Like, without blinking, without, like, noticeably breathing, without like, anything. So I almost guarantee it that that's why they included that line there and him injecting himself, because of hearing that about that whole scene and the twist from the very beginning of the series in the first movie. So that makes sense. Now, does it fully explain it? Not really. I mean, we don't know what drug it is, obviously. If it was a real drug and they mentioned it, I would have already Googled that shit the first time I saw this movie and figured out exactly what it can do. But just like relaxing your muscles and lowering your heart rate, you still have to breathe. You have to. If you don't breathe, you die. Like, that's what happens. So, like, you die if you do not breathe. So he had to have been breathing. I mean, not when everybody breathes. Like, if I'm standing here right now, you can't see my chest going in and out and stuff like that, or breathing. So I guess with John on the floor and him facing Adam, and then just betting on their mind states and the situation they're in, that they just see a dead dude on the floor, with a gun in his hand, and blood all over the place, and then that's as far as they go. It's like, we're in here with some fucking dead guy, and they're not sitting there paying attention to, is he breathing or not? Like, so it does make a little bit of sense, but it still has holes in it, I think is the best way to say it. It definitely does. And honestly, this is another reason why I love this series so much. Like, I can't stand when this series is just blown off by people as torture porn. And I mentioned this in the first Saw video. It's a stupid term. Just like when I just watched Scream 5 recently, because everyone knows how much I adore that fucking series. Finally said, fuck it, Scream 6 is coming out in March, right? March. Who gives a shit? I don't. I know a lot of people do. Not me. But I said, let me just finally watch Scream 5. And while watching it, they have the scene, I don't want to spoil it if some people haven't seen it, but trust me, you're not missing much if you're not a Scream fan. If you haven't seen Scream 5, just skip forward 30 seconds, 40 seconds. But they have the whole monologue scene with the girl talking about requels, and her whole monologue of her talking about what a requel is and the rules to that, and just the whole term requel itself is fucking stupid. Like, it shouldn't even be a thing. Like, the same with there's another phrase like that in film for a while that just is stupid. And torture porn, for me, is the biggest one. Like, I think that is such a dumb term. It means nothing. And I say this, I've said this a few times on the channel. We're horror fans. Almost all the horror we watch, unless it's like just psychological horror and stuff, but slasher genres, monster movies, vampires, zombies, all this shit. We see people getting murdered left and right, disemboweled, decapitated, throat slit, fucking all the slasher kills, arms ripped off, and it goes on and on. But this is too much? Really? Like, what we see in the traps in the Saw movies, that's too much. I can see the argument because the traps go on for a while. So you're seeing them, yes, being tortured before they're killed. So I get it. Slasher films, by contrast, most of the kills are very quick. So they're not suffering much before they die. Think of Friday Part 4 with Jimmy, with Crispin Glover's character, with the meat cleaver in the face. You get the corkscrew real quick, and then right to the face, and he fucking shakes for a few seconds, he's dead. And it's like that in all the slasher films, the Friday series, Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff. There might be a little torture, like the whole thing with the marionette, that whole scene there. That's got to be some torture for that kid going through that. But in these movies, yes, it lingers on the kills a lot longer because they're in traps. So it makes sense why it lasts longer. But I never understood the whole torture porn thing. I think it is such a dumb term that if we could watch all the aforementioned shit, this is over the line, Hostel, all that type of stuff's over the line, get the hell out of here. Unless you're just not a gore fan, which, I mean, of course, there's a ton of horror movies out there without gore. But if you're a slasher fan, or a Romero zombie fan, or any other type of zombie movies, Italian movies, giallos, all of that. If you're fans of those, but this is too much, I'll never understand that. Like, as I always say, to each their own. Everyone likes and dislikes different things. You have your opinions. 100%. We'll never say you're wrong. I just don't get it. Like, I don't get how this is too over the top. But yet, Jason, Leatherface, Victor Crowley, Art the Clown, all of them just massacring people in much more brutal looking ways is any different than this. Like, except for, like I said, the time that it takes, because they're in a trap. It's not supposed to kill them immediately, because there's supposed to be a way to get out of these traps. As obviously I said earlier, and as we find out from this movie going forward, Amanda and Hoffman both had no intentions of making traps that way. That they were always, the victims always meant to die. They never had a choice. They never had a way out. So that's my whole thing with the torture porn thing. I did notice, though, that I rarely check YouTube analytics anymore, but every now and then I'll check. And when I did the first Saw, I only went up to like 80 something views, 100 maybe, 80 sounds right, 88. I looked at the search terms that are bringing the video up, and they're all porn. All the results, like that people are looking on YouTube and finding that video. Porn movies. First of all, who the fuck in this day and age is looking on YouTube for porn? Does anybody at this point not know that porn is not allowed on YouTube? Like, really? They'll demonetize you if you fucking curse too much or curse at all. You ain't becoming a partnership program, affiliate with YouTube and making money from ads. Especially this channel, you see, which I have no intention to, never have. But just for that, you're not getting monetized. But I don't know. The whole thing with the torture porn was just hilarious, because in the title, I think, for the first Saw, for the video on it, I put like talk on the film and stuff and torture porn, and the only search options that the results that were leading to the video had porn in it, which is absolutely hysterical. Which makes me want to include torture porn in all the Saw titles from here going forward, and to see how high the views get on each of them. And if they all go around the same area, I'm going to attribute it to people searching for porn on YouTube. 100%. Alright, back to the whole thing with the device around Lynn's neck. And the slightest knock in the wrong place can set it off. When Amanda's talking to John and letting him know that the judge is alive and that he's passed the second test, he says, Lynn says to Amanda, don't touch him, you can only make it worse, which triggers her off, and she goes and she grabs her by the neck, right by this device, chokes her and puts her up against the wall and pulls a gun on her. None of that is considered slight knock in the wrong place. None of that set this thing off. Now, of course, she could be bluffing. She could obviously just be saying that just so this woman doesn't even try to take it off. I mean, it doesn't seem like something that might go off that easily, because all it looks like is just bullets put into... It's basically a gun, like a whole bunch of guns going around, just with the fucking back piece. I'm not a gun guy. With what you pull back, that loads the bullet, and then it just fires off when it detonates. So I guess the detonator That makes sense. I guess the detonator on it could go off, but how easily? It doesn't seem as easily as Amanda's saying. So who knows for sure? And then we get the scene here with Amanda going back to the bathroom after, after the first movie, and strangles Adam to death. Suffocates him with a plastic bag, and says that I'm freeing you. But we know this is all bullshit. But so she actually went back and killed Adam, which John knows about. Well, I guess he knows about everything, as it seems. This is a cool thought I just had now. I never thought of it like this. But I love how, as I've said, how this story fits and connects and was just written to go with the prior entries and events, and the later ones tying back into other ones and everything like that. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. The story itself to this franchise is like a jigsaw puzzle. And there's just so many pieces as you go through and see, oh, all right, so this reason is why this, and then that fits here. Okay, and that can add that. I never thought of it that way. Maybe everybody has, and I'm the last one here who's just realizing it. But I like that. How you can describe the story of this whole franchise as a jigsaw puzzle, just like Jigsaw. So that's kind of cool when you think about it like that. Back to Saw 2, when I was saying at the very beginning of this, and we're past the hour mark here. Figured. But in Saw 2, like I said, how there's no, what is the reason for that whole game for Matthews? As we go forward here, from this one, obviously, Jeff's whole game is about forgiveness. His ability or inability to forgive these people involved, or the actual person who killed and murdered his son. So forgiveness is the obvious thing here for Jeff. Then we see in the next movie with Riggs, and his whole game is about his whole inability to keep his emotions in check and always rushing in to an unsecured door and just letting his emotions get the best of him and not thinking like a cop and thinking logically and going slow. He has to get there. He has to get through the door. And that's ultimately what leads to his demise. Then you have in part 5 of them learning at the end that they had to help each other to get through all of that. Then you have the whole thing with the insurance companies in 6. So all of the Saw films from this one going forward have some type of theme that's being played on and being explored throughout it. I don't get that from 2. I don't. If you want to go real far back, little subtext maybe of how corruption with the police, and how I keep wanting to say agent for some reason. Detective Matthews, planted all the evidence on all those criminals that were in the trap, in the game, and he's a dirty cop. So you could look at it that way, but I feel like that's nowhere near as front and center as the themes and concepts are that are being explored from this movie onward. And I really love that too about this franchise. Alright, now right here, this is the hard one. The rack, it's called. Like I said, the wretch, I don't know what the fuck I meant by that. The rack, which is just an amazing trap. This is one of my favorite traps in the series, which is the guy who killed Jeff's son, who ran him over, which is just in this, just all limbs in machinery, and then it just starts twisting his limbs apart, and his legs are being twisted around, and then finally his head and his neck gets broken and twisted around. What an awesome fucking trap. And Jigsaw even says that this is a favorite of his, the rack. So I can see why. I dig your style, Jigsaw. It's cool. But this would be the hard one. So hard. To be staring at the person who murdered your son. It wasn't on purpose, it was manslaughter and stuff, but still, doesn't matter. Your son's fucking gone. and there's nothing bringing him back, and it's this guy's fault. I don't know, man. Like, I really don't think I'd be able to forgive this person in Jeff's situation, or if I, God forbid, ever was in a situation like that. There's no chance. Like, there's like a 0.1% chance, maybe, I could find it in me to just forgive. I doubt it. I really do. Like, you're staring for the first time after, I think it's a few years, 2, 3 years, I think, since Jeff's son died. Thinking of him for years, this guy. All day, every night, all the sleepless nights that he must have had just thinking of this guy. And he even says, I thought for all this time of what I'm going to do to you if I ever met you. All of that, I don't think I'd be able to forgive him. I wouldn't. And you already know you're in some fucked up weird situation, so it's not like he's got to know. He's got to have thoughts, Jeff, that he's not getting out of this alive. So I don't know if I'd be able to forgive him. And obviously he dies. But the whole thing that I thought when I was watching this movie in the theaters for the first time, well, it's the only time I saw it in theaters, but the first time I saw it in theaters, I was thinking that he would have to have saved all three of them. And at the end, it would be like, yeah, you got through it, but sorry, you only saved one of them. And the one that he saved doesn't even live because they have the shotgun with the key attached to it. That's another easy one, man. I mean, come on. Just tell the judge, first of all, get the fuck out of the blast. Get the hell out of the way, the trajectory the bullet's facing, the gun's facing. And then just go like this. This is the fucking box here, and the gun's aiming this way, that way. That's straight, right? I can't tell from here. Just lean this way, put your hand in, and yank the fucking key. That's it. Like, that's it. Like, he unties the key, and then the gun goes off, and it's only because the judge is standing in the direction that the gun's pointed that he gets shot in the face and killed. So that's stupid. Like, they absolutely could have got that key off that gun without Jeff taking a bullet for him or for the judge being killed. Like, 100%. And then this is where we get Amanda walking in on John holding Lynn's hand. And this is just what sets her off, man. And then now here is where we see some proof that that Hoffman is involved at this point. Because we see Amanda go in the drawer and take out the envelope that says her name on it. Now, we don't find out what's in that envelope until part 6, I want to say. So 3 movies from now. Maybe part 5, but I want to say 6. So that was one hell of a thing. Like, I was wondering that for 3 years, basically. Like, from seeing this in theaters until part 6 was in theaters of, like, what the hell was in that envelope. And we find out in 6, again, I want to say it's 6, pretty sure. But we find out that Hoffman put that envelope in there with a letter saying that I know that you were there with Cecil, the other drug addict, breaking into the clinic where John's wife worked, and is the reason that their son Gideon was miscarried, and that she lost the baby, and that's why she looked so shocked when she's looking at that envelope. So that proves right here that Hoffman is involved at this point. How long before this, and like how close to part 2? That I'm not sure. But I'd like to think that he became involved between those 2 films, between 2 and this one. Because like I said, in the bathroom, we see Amanda with this short black hair that she had when she was in the house from part 2. So, I don't know. I'd like to think that it's somewhere between there. That Hoffman started with Jigsaw before the events of this movie, but after the events of the second one. Again, with Dr. Gordon, though, that I'm not sure of, and probably won't be sure of until part 7. I also like just how calculated John is here. He knows he's going to die. He knows Amanda's going to fail her test. He knows everyone's going to die here because no one could forgive. So he knows that he's going to die. And I like how subtly they show him pouring the candle wax over the tape that we see in part 4 that Hoffman listens to, saying, the games have just begun even though I'm dead. So I like that little subtlety of him putting the wax on the tape so he can swallow it. When he does, I mean, his throat's slit wide open. So is he really able to take that tape still after that and then swallow it? No, probably not. Maybe. Who knows? I'm not a doctor, and I've never had my throat slit while trying to swallow a small cassette tape. So I can't give an answer on that. But this is where Amanda's just, like, had it. Like, she's just not having this whole thing with Lynn and John, even though it's all in her head. And now the whole last 20 minutes of this movie, I absolutely adore. Everything about it. When her saying that he got through the last test with the rack, and that he's on his way, and him saying to John saying to Amanda, "All right, Lynn, let Lynn go. She's free to go," and her saying, "No, he's not all the way through yet." And Amanda, let her go. And then she pulls the gun out and she just starts saying, and then we get to see a nice little flashback to her and Detective Matthews beating the shit out of each other. And just the pain that Shawnee Smith conveys as Amanda here, and just the confusion, the anger, like there's so many emotions that she puts on that she does a great job with. I don't hear Shawnee Smith get any praise really, like, often at all, for her performance as Amanda in these movies. Like, I really don't. And she doesn't have like a great, like, she's not a great actress, but she does the role very well, for sure. But then she says that this is all bullshit, that no one ever changes, and that John's whole philosophy here is all bullshit, and that she doesn't mean anything to John, and John says, like, I mean, you mean everything to me, and our fates are linked. And just all of this, the whole ending dialogue between John and Amanda and Lynn, and just all of that, and her saying, fix me, motherfucker, I'm standing right here, and just saying, why is this woman so important, why is Lynn so important? And he says, she's not important to me, like, she's important to you. And, like, you have no idea, like, how linked you guys are. And he's begging her. Like, he really wants her to pass her test. And he's begging her just to trust him. Which is a huge thing that no one seems to be able to do. Like, I mean, I get it. I mean, the situations they're in. But Eric Matthews, he couldn't just sit there and talk with John until the safe opened. And his son was safe. That's all he had to do. But again, I don't even think that was an option, because I think they had to get Matthews just for motivation for Riggs is the only thing I can think of. Like I said, I have no clue what the whole reason for that whole plan in Saw 2 is, or was. I don't know what it was for, but that's the only thing I can think of. But I just love the tension in the scene. There's a lot of tension in this whole scene, as Jeff's getting closer and everything, like, so good. And then Amanda, just broken down, turns the gun, shoots Lynn as she's walking away, and Jeff's coming right in, and Jeff, and she falls into Jeff's arms, and I love Jigsaw's line of, you just destroyed 4 lives. The way he delivers it, just something about it, and it's just, it's cynical, man. Like, like, it's really, like, it hits. It's like she just destroyed 4 people's lives. Herself, Jeff, Lynn's, and John's. But is he referring to himself also? Or is the 4th person he's referring to their daughter? Because that's one thing I don't remember from the 4th one. Pretty sure Hoffman rescues the daughter, right? Which is even more evidence, not that we need any more evidence, that he was involved with, since the beginning of this movie at least, with the envelope and stuff. But the fact of him being able to save their daughter, I'm guessing John had to tell Hoffman because I do not think that John would let a little girl be locked away somewhere and die. I just don't. Like, just with all his philosophy, as batshit crazy as it is and stuff, it's always targeted at adults and stuff like that. You never see a kid harmed by Jigsaw in any of these movies. Like, so I do not think he would put the daughter in a situation that she would die. He had to have told Hoffman, and that's how Hoffman was able to fake rescue her because he's the only other one besides John who knew where she was. He's not going to tell Amanda, and the whole reason too, I believe this, is because John pretty much knew that Amanda was going to fail her test here. Like, he knew. He knew he was going to die here. And that even if he didn't get killed by Jeff, he was dying soon anyway. He knew Amanda was going to fail. So it makes a lot of sense with how calculated Jigsaw is that he had to have told Hoffman the location of the daughter. Like, had to. Like, I can't see it any other way. But yeah, Jeff shoots Amanda's in the neck as soon as Lynn falls into his arms after Amanda shoots her. It's just fucking shoots Lynn, falls into Jeff, Jeff shoots Amanda, and then John's tells her that this was your test, and like, I cleaned up all your mistakes. You were making traps, you were making these things unescapable. You're making them murder, like, with no choice, no way out. Then Jeff has to have the decision here of forgiving John for everything that he put his family through here. And again, I mean, on top of just being through this whole event that he's been through and having to meet face to face, not just the actual person who killed his son, but the judge, the witness who drove right away, so there's no way anybody knew who the fuck she was, but Jigsaw found out somehow. All of that. Great. I think I said John's son. If I did, I meant Jeff's son, obviously. But him going through all of that and having to forgive his son's killer, which he does way too late, like 100% way too late. That guy's twisted in every way. He's a fucking pretzel at that point. But he is like crying, like up against his body, saying, I forgive you, like, I forgive you. But after dealing with all that, and then coming here and seeing your wife be taken from you too, she's shot right in front of you, and then having this old dude that you've never seen before in a hospital bed, and him saying that there's a whole bunch of weapons here that you can kill me with, and take your vengeance, or you can forgive me for what I put your family through. And he can't forgive this guy, and I don't blame him 100%, especially because of all the stuff he just had to deal with, the emotions that was probably running through his head from as soon as he got out of that box and through all three of the rooms and all of that. Now he's losing his wife too. I wouldn't be able to do it. But one thing that does bother me here, though, is the fact that I forget where Lynn was shot. It looked like in her back or upper back. She can't say. All she says is like, Jeff, no. Like before he kills Jigsaw. She can't scream out, Jeff, don't kill him. If you do, I'll die too. Like, you'd think that would be the first words out of her mouth. Like, Jeff, don't kill him or I'm going to die also. We're linked together. That's all you had to say. I mean, if she could say, Jeff, no. Yeah, she's out of breath, she's dying, but she could still get that information out. And then he just takes the power saw and circular saw and just slashes John's throat. And again, this is a little stupid here that I'm counting the seconds. We're up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So over a dozen seconds at least from his throat being fucking slit to him playing the cassette tape. I mean, come on, man. I mean, I'm sure it could happen. Like, I guess it depends on how much blood loss you're getting immediately. He does hit him with the saw, like, right in the front. It doesn't look like it went on the side near his artery. But, I mean, you're getting your throat fucking slit with a circular saw. You would think that he would not have the time or the energy or the thoughts even to push play on that cassette tape. I don't know. That always was weird to me too. Also, Jeff has to learn what forgiveness actually means. You can't kill somebody and then say I forgive you. Like, it just doesn't work that way. That's like going up to somebody and punching them in the face as hard as possible because they stole something from you and then saying I forgive you. But it's not even like that because you're fucking killing this person. Then trying to say I forgive you afterwards to a dying person or just a dead body, like it should be at this point. I don't know. Then we just have the iconic fucking score, man, that kicks in, and I love it every single time, man. And then just the final little scene here with all the flashbacks, and like I say, man, it must be hell editing these movies. Like, if I had to edit like 4 or 5 Saw films year after year, I wouldn't edit a thing again. And you all know I don't edit on this channel at all. So I'm definitely not editing a Saw movie. Like, you get like almost a seizure, like just watching all those cuts, like during the finales of these movies. But the score and everything is so good. If anyone hasn't checked out, I have a video. I do a lot of videos of you know, theme songs and scores to horror movies on guitar. And I did recent one after I did the first Saw movie, so it's a little newer of a video than the first Saw one. Probably 2 weeks ago, something like that. But I did a pretty cool guitar arrangement for the theme song for this. So check that out if you want to hear that. But just the whole thing on the tape with him saying, like, I told you, Jeff, that you couldn't kill me, but I didn't say why. And that I'm responsible for the loss of your child. I'm the only one who knows where your daughter is. And she only has a limited supply of air. And then you just see Lynn's face and just shock, and Jeff just screaming no, and like it's his own damn fault. Obviously, he had no idea of knowing that. But then the detonator, the collar goes off, and you don't see her head explode or anything, but you see the aftermath, and it looks fantastic. It looks so good. Like, her face is blown apart, man. That's like getting like 5, 6 or more shotgun shells all blown into your face. Like, that's absolutely awesome. And then Jeff just screams, and that's the end, man. So, Saw 3, 2006. Like I said, probably, definitely in my top 3 for the series. The first one for me, and I've said this to a longer extent because this is getting long here, in the first Saw video I did, that I love it, but I like a lot of the later ones better. Just for how it expands on the whole story and the jigsaw pieces that come together, as I mentioned earlier, for the story. But awesome film. Like, this might be my favorite. Between this and 6 would be my favorites. So let's see how the 6 holds up after I watch this. After I watch 6. 6, like the number. So, Saw 4, Saw 3 is over, and I'm gonna let my laptop chop. I can't fucking talk now at the end of here. I'm gonna let my laptop charge. Okay, charge. And then I will hop up and watch Saw 4 and get another video out there for you guys, especially you Saw fans. So wherever you guys are from, hoping you are having a great morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, guys.